took 2 cracks at it, and then we were just like, you know what, let's just throw in the towel and just admit, let's just do a Blair Witch movie.
Yeah, this new Blair Witch movie, it's not very good. So rewatching this sequel the other day got my blood boiling and my head melting, ultimately leaving me with one simple question. How could they fuck up so bad? Well, that's exactly what I'm gonna try to answer today by exploring how these two movies that are very similar in many ways can lead to such different results in quality. As you're all aware, 1999's The Blair Witch Project has had a huge impact on the horror genre. Just like Halloween is the holy grail of slasher movies, The Blair Witch Project is the holy grail of found footage. Of course, there were other movies before that experimented with this gimmick, the most famous one being Cannibal Holocaust, which features a mix between regular movie footage and found footage. Or at least that's what I heard, because no way am I watching real live animals getting tortured and killed. No thank you. But anyways, The Blair Witch Project is the film that in many ways created the found footage subgenre that was even more popularized later on with Paranormal Activity. But the thing with Blair Witch is that it didn't only have a very original concept with the way it was shot, but also with the way it was marketed and released. It's a great example of an early use of transmedia in entertainment. As our good friends over at Wikipedia describe it, transmedia is the technique of telling a single story or story experience across multiple platforms and formats using current digital technologies. Safe to say, for a 1999 movie, this was pretty new, and dare I say, revolutionary.
It's revolutionary.
To understand this better, here's a brief run-through of the different marketing strategies for this movie. The team spread rumors about 3 film students who had disappeared in the woods. They also made up fake stories that were published in local newspapers, and they passed out missing person leaflets. They also shared pictures and rumors on message boards and chat rooms, which helped spread the word of mouth. In September of 1999, a dossier was released sharing police reports, pictures, interviews, and newspaper articles describing the supposed true story that happened with the missing teenagers. They even released a short documentary a few weeks before the film's release called Curse of the Blair Witch, and it explains so much more about the lore and mythos. But most importantly, what may be the most successful marketing move is the Blair Witch website.
BlairWitch.com.
This very minimalistic website offered a lot of information on the Blair Witch mythos, the different legends surrounding the town of Burkittsville, who the filmmakers were, etc. For the year this came out, I have to praise the originality and ambitiousness of this whole project. With very little money and resources, they were able to create a massive viral marketing campaign and a way to add so much depth to the mythos while also making people believe that all of it was real. Of course, all of this most definitely contributed to the film's success, grossing nearly $200 million on an estimated budget of $60,000. Holy shit, that's pretty good. This film was insanely popular. Everyone knew about it.
Yes, I know about it.
And there were an absurd amount of Blair Witch parodies to take advantage of the movie's success. Scary Movie spoofed it, Scooby-Doo spoofed it,
I'm scared, man!
SNL spoofed it, of course, and there were a bunch of weird-ass movies such as The Bogus Witch Project, The Blair Thumb, The Tony Blair Witch Project, what the fuck, and of course my favorite of them all, The Erotic Witch Project. Well, it's no surprise that seeing the enormous success of the Blair Witch Project, people would try to take advantage of that because, you know, money.
Artisan wants to make another Blair film.
And so barely a year later, Artisan Entertainment rushed out a sequel called Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2, which is a very strange meta movie that we might take a look at one day, but the film wasn't very popular and everybody hated it.
I thought the movie was cool.
Not this time.
The property didn't stay completely dormant though, as it spawned video games, young adult novels, even comic books, but no movie in sight.
Until now.
That's right, little girl. At the 2016 San Diego Comic-Con, a horror movie titled The Woods was to be screened for the first time. But surprise, turns out it was a Blair Witch sequel called Blair Witch. People were pretty excited, myself included, seeing how much I enjoyed director Adam Wingard and writer Simon Barrett's previous films, The Guest and You're Next. They're very interesting little movies, and also the reason why they were approached to handle this sequel. And being huge fans of the original, they immediately accepted. So naturally, I went in with bigger expectations than I should have. I was a fan of these guys and they seemed to be treating this project with a lot of love and care. Then I saw the film.
As soon as, Jason brought this up, I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to redeem myself,
You're wrong.
So in case you've been living under a rock while also having access to Wi-Fi and YouTube, here's a quick recap of the story for both these movies. The Blair Witch Project is about Heather, Josh, and Mike, 3 film students making a documentary on the legend of the Blair Witch. They start by interviewing the town locals, who all share different stories as to what the legend really is.
Some of the young kids started to disappear, and nobody knew anything about why they were disappearing.
He made one face into the corner.
Really?
And then he would kill the other one.
All of a sudden, I felt like something was near me. It was like a woman.
Our group then wanders into the woods to get some footage, but they end up getting lost. They seem to be taking it pretty well, though.
Are you out of your fucking mind? I'm not out of my mind. The map doesn't do shit. Do you realize?
Yeah, tension is rising and hope is slipping away. And on top of all of that, strange things keep happening at night. They hear distant noises. Something unknown starts shaking their tent. And they wake up to find piles of rocks and hanging sticks. Everything ends in this old creepy house where Heather finds Mike standing in a corner before something attacks her and makes her drop the camera. Well, that was spooky, right? At least it is for me, but some people think this movie is boring and didn't age well. And speaking of boring and destined to age very badly, let's talk about the sequel. Blair Witch is very similar to the original movie, which is why it's mostly considered a soft reboot as much as a sequel. It starts the exact same way as the first one did, which already indicates a lack of originality. So this one takes place in 2014 and focuses on James, Heather's younger brother, and he finds a video on YouTube that shows a woman who he thinks is her sister. And so he decides to look for her, even though it's been 20 goddamn years. To me, this already feels like a very bad idea. Why not just have the film take place shortly after the first one? Then Heather could possibly still be alive, and it would make sense for him to go look for his sister. I'm no professional screenwriter, but hell, he could have been part of a search party trying to find his sister, and he could eventually get lost and have creepy shit happening to him. The connection and motivation would at least feel a little bit more believable. But here, the authorities have already searched the forest extensively and never found the bodies. But 20 years later, James thinks he's gonna find her?
But those woods have been searched, right? They never found a house.
Yeah, but the Black Hills Forest is huge, so maybe they weren't looking in the right place, you know?
She's dead. This is also where we're introduced to these obnoxious camera glitches that make no goddamn sense.
Temp narration, take 1, take 2, 3.
That's not how it works. Narration, take 1, 2, take 1. Yeah, it gets really annoying. Now, as you can see, this is also a found footage movie because James's friend Alice is a film student and she's making a documentary for her class. Where have I heard that before? So anyways, James and his pals go to the forest to try and find Heather and also make a documentary on the side, I guess. But before that, they go meet Lane and Talia, the couple that uploaded the YouTube footage we saw at the beginning. So they also tag along because we need a body bag. And then we essentially get a recreation of the first movie. The group walks around in the woods, they camp at night, they hear spooky noises, they find piles of rocks and stick figures. You get the idea, it's all the same, except this time we have jump scares. Many pointless, boring, badly acted, overdone, annoying, boring scenes later, we finally reach the climax of the movie where, you guessed it, James and Alice find the old creepy house. Except now they're being chased by a big monster. They find out that this monster, who may or may not be the witch, I'm not really sure, can't kill you if you don't look at it. It's the Blair Medusa. And so logically, they stand in the corner away from her sight and they're safe.
Heather? Is that really you?
Wait, is Heather alive? No, stupid idiot. So Lisa is our last remaining character. She slowly walks away while still avoiding the monster, but then she hears James's voice.
Lisa, I'm so sorry.
Wait, is James still alive? No, you stupid idiot. I guess you can excuse James's stupid idea to turn around because he's desperate to see his sister, so he doesn't act in a rational way, maybe? But Alice has no excuse. She just saw what happened to her friend. She knows the witch can play mind games, and then she hears James and she's like, oh, James, is that? Yo, shit, I'm a fucking stupid idiot.
I hated this movie.
Okay, this is how I'm gonna redeem myself, you know, like...
So, watching a couple of interviews and promotional material for Blair Witch, I noticed that Adam Wingard seems to put a big emphasis on how he wanted to do justice to the found footage genre, and how most found footage films are terrible.
Kind of the reason why we wanted to make this film is because it felt like the whole subgenre just seemed to be kind of spiraling, you know, kind of in this, like, you know, nonsense direction. It didn't really feel like it had an aim after paranormal, really.
Right. And yeah, that sounds very condescending, but he's kind of right at the same time. He wanted to go back to the roots of the subgenre subgenre and honor the original Blair Witch. Unfortunately, I feel like he completely missed the mark when it comes to the most important thing about the original: realism. Now, this can both be considered a good thing and a bad thing for the movie. Some will praise the effort put into the realism of the Blair Witch Project, and how believable it is, and how our imagination can sometimes be far scarier than anything shown on screen. But some people will also criticize the long stretches of time where not much is happening, and say that the film ultimately doesn't live up to the hype and isn't scary at all. Both takes are fair in my opinion, it all comes down to subjectivity, but in any case, I feel like we can all agree that the Blair Witch Project feels like something that could very well have happened in real life. And it's no wonder why the movie feels so real, because most of it was. Heather, Josh, and Mike used their real names so people wouldn't think they're fictional characters. Most of the dialogue from the locals was ad-libbed, and the actors thought the Blair Witch legend was real. They also shot just about every scene from the film themselves, and actually lived in the woods for a week, with only a couple of directions telling them where to go every day. Everything else was improvised, and every line of dialogue comes from the actors themselves and not from a script. Josh had a hard time using the 16mm camera because that bitch is hard to handle, and so a couple of shots are blurry and grainy and they don't look too good, but they look real. Most of the actors' reactions are also genuine, including the real arguments and fighting they constantly had while shooting, as well as the scary scenes at night. It's become very well known at this point, but yes, the directors shook their tent at night and played creepy noises on a boombox in the distance.
Fucking go!
And lastly, there's an unintentionally very effective scene near the end of the movie where Heather sees the Blair Witch in the woods. There really was someone wearing a white dress or something like that, and we were supposed to see it, but we never did because Josh didn't shoot it properly. And so in the end, we never get to see the Blair Witch. I think this is to the benefit of the movie, because this all could have happened, whereas a floating witch in the air is not something you see every day, or at least I don't think. I say all of this with my point being that this film was an experiment. Many things could have gone very wrong, and the director put all of his fate on his actors, hoping to get something good and scary out of them. And so you may think that this is an unfair comparison, because of course if they make a big budget sequel 20 odd years later, they can't possibly do the same experiment. This is a pretty big movie, so obviously there's gonna be a script, professional cameramen, bigger and louder scares. This was all to be expected, and it was obvious that the new Blair Witch would not feel as realistic, which is why I think a sequel should not exist in the first place. But that being said though, I don't think that the realism of the original movie comes only from the fact that most things we see are real. There are other ways to make a movie feel genuine. So just to have a little fun, I compiled elements from the original movie that made it feel real, but that were planned before and not accidental.
Let's be realistic.
It makes sense for Heather, Mike, and Josh to be filming constantly because they're making a documentary, obviously.
Realistic.
They spend a lot of time focusing on Heather's passion for this project. They show them prepping for the shoot, using a clap. Josh mentions his difficulty with the 16mm camera and how hard it is to have the right depth of field. In their time off, Heather keeps bringing up the schedule and the different scenes they need to shoot in a specific amount of time before they lose sunlight.
Realistic.
Unlike the sequel, they don't just film themselves in the woods. Heather is actually reporting, asking questions, narrating, and explaining the legend. She also feels very pretentious, just like all film students are.
Yet legend tells a different story. One whose evidence is all around us, etched in stone.
And so it makes total sense that she's taking this way too seriously.
Realistic.
All three characters have a clear role and purpose in the film, as well as a distinct personality. You got the sound guy, the camera guy, and the reporter/director. Josh is the laid-back, kinda lazy guy who's just tagging along and not taking everything very seriously. Mike enjoys doing sound work, so he's pretty excited to be part of a movie. He's also scared but hates to admit it.
I ain't going down there.
Why not?
Because I'm not. I don't hear shit.
Because you're fucking scared.
And lastly, Heather is the leader, deciding everything and being responsible for everything. She's also very stressed out by this project, and there are subtle details indicating this, like when she slightly stutters when reporting.
Blood at the edges of the hemp indicate that this act had been committed while each was alive.
And then she explains that they're behind schedule, so her mind was elsewhere. Again, everyone has a purpose for being there.
Realistic.
Now let's do a similar exercise with the sequel, but with everything that feels unrealistic and that could have been done better.
See, this business is filled to the brim with unrealistic motherfuckers.
They took the original ending of the first movie and changed it to have a monster growl. even if it was clearly not in the first movie and completely disrespects the intent of staying ambiguous and realistic.
Unrealistic.
They inexplicably keep on doing these glitchy effects with every camera, even though no camera in the world does that.
Unrealistic.
Speaking of sound, the audio in this party scene is perfectly mixed and it sounds amazing.
That should be. Did you press and hold the button when you did it?
Yeah.
Even though recording a real party with your camera should sound something like this.
Unrealistic.
There's a lot of forced-in humor that feels very out of place. It's not very funny at all.
Com check?
Yeah, that's like what people say in the military, over.
Okay, anyways, it's working. Over.
Copy that, over and out.
Unrealistic.
The reason they're filming everything is because Alice is a film student making a documentary, yet you never see her planning any shot, using a clap, doing interviews, having a cohesive narrative for her movie, having a crew, since it would be pretty hard to make a movie on your own. I think it would fit better if they were making like a vlog for YouTube, or even better, filming everything just to try to get some evidence. But using the film school documentary card feels overplayed, and it doesn't make sense since they're not even making a movie.
Unrealistic, motherfuckers.
Every character has no personality and is useless. Instead of having a cameraman, a sound guy, and a director, we've got this couple who just tags along but don't really serve any purpose. They're just there, and I guess they're friends of James, and that's their characters. Alice is as bland as can be. Despite being one of the most important characters and the one who survives last, she's the most forgettable, I think. She really doesn't do anything. Lane and Talia feel like they exist only to barf up some exposition about the lore that we already know about. They also force in some conflict that feels completely unnecessary. Like at one point the group finds these spooky sticks and we realize that they put them there. Why'd you do that? And in the end one dies and the other went crazy because the witch told him to kill people, I think, I'm not sure. Why not do the same with these characters? There's this whole subplot where this lady cut her foot open and it leads to this weird thing coming out of her leg. Maybe that thing could have put a curse on her, so when the stick breaks she dies, and then her boyfriend is angry so he runs away in the forest or something, and later on you find out he's been brainwashed and he's trying to kill everybody? Wouldn't that give a bit more purpose to these characters?
Unrealistic, motherfuckers.
Again, I'm sure there's a ton more, but I've rambled on for long enough, so let's move on. Similar to my last point, this can very much be a double-edged sword. It's astonishing to see how people consider this to be one of the scariest movie ever made, and some consider it to be the most boring movie ever made. Because in the end, the Blair Witch Project is all about the fear of the unknown, and I think it explores it beautifully with ambiguity and subtlety. The few interviews we get at the beginning are a great example of that. We get many different perspectives and information regarding the mysterious past of Burkittsville.
Finally, one day, old Mr. Parr come down into the market and they searched his house and they found the bodies of 7 kids.
Do you believe in witchcraft?
No.
It's possible that she's still up there now.
I don't go up there.
How about her
She's a
face?
Female. It's just kind of like strange looking.
Everyone is an unreliable narrator. You have no way of knowing what's real and what isn't. You just have to make up your own mind. And since you never get to see anything, even you become an unreliable narrator, making your own theories and giving your own perspectives, and then making a clickbait YouTube video on it. So is Rustin Parr responsible for everything and the rest is all made up? Maybe he's using the legend as an excuse for what he did, or maybe the witch really did force him to do this.
I heard voices in my head. What kind of voices? A woman's.
This lady, Mary Brown, says she saw the witch, but everyone in town thinks she's completely nuts. Robin Weaver apparently saw a creepy old woman, but that's a story from the 1800s. Maybe it was all made up, or maybe it's based on actual events but turned into a fictional legend with time. There's even a mention of a biblical character, Esau.
What was the story from the Bible that she was telling us? It was Esau, but it was something about a pile of rocks.
But wait, there's more.
We're not done yet.
Josh finds strange blue slime on his backpack at one point.
It looks like slime, man. It's just water, man. It is slime. What the fuck is that, dude?
And wouldn't you know it, he's the first to disappear before being presumably tortured and then killed. So at this point, the witch could also very well be a fucking alien for all we know. Blue slime doesn't sound very human to me. And so despite not seeing anything on screen besides a couple of sticks and rocks, the idea that all of these strange theories and legends could be responsible for what's happening, that's pretty frightening to me. Is it a ghost? Is it a witch? Is it a monster? Is it a serial killer? Is it all their imagination? And of course, this leads me to talk about subtlety and fear. Again, let's keep in mind that this is a horror movie about the fear of the unknown, or at least that's what I got from it. And so to explore this kind of fear, they of course can't really show a big CG monster running around. They instead used small, creepy little details that make the movie scarier, not necessarily because of what you see, but because of what it implies. For example, there's this scene where a mother is talking about the legends surrounding the town, and the child immediately starts covering her mom's mouth when she mentions the Blair Witch. Is she doing this because she's a stupid child, or is it like an omen? It's pretty damn creepy. There's also this scene right here, one of the scariest in the movie for me, where Heather and Mike hear Josh screaming and agonizing in pain. Is that Josh getting killed, or is the witch luring them? Hearing this in total darkness with these people lost in the middle of the woods is horrifying, especially when you have no idea who's causing this. Only your imagination can make out what kind of torture Josh is going through. And this leads to another very creepy scene where Heather finds Josh's blood, teeth, and hair, all wrapped in a stick bundle. It's really fucking horrifying. What the hell did this to him? What does it want? And most importantly, how can you make shit stains in your pants go away? I need some advice, please. Lastly, another very important thing about the Blair Witch Project is that first and foremost, it's about people losing hope and losing their mind. That's what's so scary and effective about it. The lore and creepy noises add a lot to the fear factor, but people being lost in the woods and slowly accepting that they're gonna die, that's already scary on its own.
Back in the 1940s, Rustin Parr brought 8 kids out to his house in these woods. Killed 7 of them.
And they found the bodies of 7 kids from the area.
But the first thing that annoys me with the sequel is that they needlessly re-explain every single bit of lore we already know.
He would take them up to his attic and make one stand in the corner while he killed the other one.
He made one face into the corner, and then he would kill the other one.
We already know all of that from the first film, and it was told in a much better way. Heather interviews the town locals and asks them about the subject of her documentary, The Blair Witch. It's great world building, it feels eerie, the atmosphere is great, and it all sets up some of the horror scenes that come later on. Again, at the risk of repeating myself, it's realistic, it's subtle, and it makes sense in the context of the story. In this one, kids are wandering in the woods just babbling about the witch. Our characters are literally just vomiting out exposition in the laziest way possible. It feels so unnatural, just forced into the script in case the audience hasn't seen the first movie. I fail to see how this is bringing found footage in a new direction and doing justice to the Blair Witch Project if you're not gonna put any effort into expanding the lore. Besides from adding the concept of a time loop, the only new additions to the backstory are cheap ways to explain everything from the original, like how you can't look at the witch directly or you die, so you have to face a wall.
The legend says if you look directly at the witch, you'll die just from the fright of it.
It doesn't feel like an expansion of the lore, and more so a pointless way to fill in the blanks that didn't need to be addressed. The other irritating thing is that this drags on for way too long. There's about 3 or 4 different scenes of the characters either walking in the woods or sitting down in the woods and explaining every bit of information about the legend. In the first film, they establish all the lore in 9 minutes, and they don't talk about it ever again. The plot moves forward, and instead of focusing solely on the creepy tales, they instead focus on the human drama and the characters slowly losing their minds. We don't need half an hour of spooky ghost stories. The second half of the movie is really where things take a different turn. We still get a lot of the same old shit, but the key difference is that it becomes a monster movie. Honestly, I don't mind this at all. Being chased by a creepy monster / alien in the woods at night is a very scary idea. And if they're not gonna use subtlety and realism to scare people, because, you know, that'd be boring, well, they might as well have a creepy monster. That's not the problem. My main issue is how they handle that monster. For about 50% of the movie, we get a rehash of the original. They don't show anything. We just hear creepy noises at night, and that's about it. But then, out of nowhere, this guy hears a big monster growl and is then taken away.
What?
Could this scene have been scary and effective? Sure, but the problem is that the monster comes out of fucking nowhere. Since when is there a monster in the woods? Didn't you want to like set it up? I think a great example of a monster movie in the forest is the Netflix film The Ritual. So slight spoilers for this film if you haven't seen it. I bring this up because The Ritual does an amazing job at setting up the monster as well as the creepy atmosphere. The forest in this almost feels like a character of its own. The moments leading up to the group entering this forest feel very ominous. You get the feeling that something's not right, like the compass not working, and this mysterious abandoned car in the middle of nowhere. There are great lingering shots of the trees, and although you don't see anything, you instantly get the feeling that the group is being watched by something. They find some pretty creepy shit, like a gutted animal tied up to a tree. They hear some weird noises in the distance. They find weird symbols and totems, like this creepy fucking thing that haunts my nightmares. As for the monster, you do end up seeing it plenty at the end, but its reveal is very slow. The first thing you see is what looks like a hand, except it's really high in the air, and then it moves and whoops, I shat my pants again. Well, this just turned into a mini review of The Ritual, but I thought it was important to bring it up because it shows that you can make a monster flick in the forest and still have a good movie. Just set up the atmosphere, set up the monster, and give it a presence. Make it feel like it's constantly there preying on the group. But instead the monster appears out of nowhere, picks out a few characters like it's a slasher film, and at the end it's chasing Lisa in the house.
It's not good.
I quickly want to mention the characters because I feel like this is the final nail in the coffin. A lot of people mentioned that Heather was annoying and bitchy, and that's kind of true for the first act of the film, but where I really started to feel for her is when she realizes that she put everyone in trouble and that it's essentially all her fault, and her guilt leads to the infamous apology video, which yes does feature a lot of snot, but more importantly, not only is Heather taking the blame and facing the reality she couldn't face before, that this is essentially all her fault, but this also shows the point where she gives up and just accepts that they're gonna die in that forest.
I'm so sorry. I'm gonna die out here.
They keep bringing up what they would do if they ever got out of the forest.
Do I have a meatball?
Just one meatball.
And a long red glass of wine?
Yeah, I would definitely have a whole fucking bottle of Bordeaux.
This guy says that he wants his mom's mashed potatoes.
Mom's mashed potatoes.
Which, you know, it's not that interesting out of context, but I think he says that because he's thinking about how he may never see his mom again, and he may never enjoy a nice meal with his loved ones. It's a beautiful and subtle way to show how desperate they are. The biggest take here is the vulnerability of these people.
Ow, my hair's gone.
The characters in the new movie though, this guy especially, just keeps on being an asshole to everybody. Lane starts talking about the Blair Witch legend, and the guy just starts laughing in his face.
No one living this.
I don't think it's funny.
At one point he's not able to set up the tent, so he starts being mean to everybody.
Please let me just put the tent together, okay? Fuck. Fuck you.
Is it supposed to be funny? What's the purpose of this scene? Sure, the first film had plenty of arguing, but not because of a fucking tent. It's because they're lost. They're losing patience and blaming each other. And as harsh as they can be, they support each other instead of acting like assholes. The best example to show this as best as I can is to compare the hotel scene from both movies. In the sequel, everyone feels the same. Just a bunch of jolly friends being so happy and having so much fun. In the original, the characters keep their distinct character traits. Go figure.
Let's be relaxed because we've got a really, really long day tomorrow. Today was cake.
The two guys are having dumb fun and not taking this too seriously. Heather, on the other hand, is still focused and stressed out about her documentary. And then, after seeing the guys messing around and having fun, she gives in and asks for a shot, finally letting go for once and just enjoying the moment.
Drink! Drink!
I fucking hate scotch.
The two scenes are similar, but have such a different impact. One makes our characters evolve, it solidifies their chemistry, it makes the viewer understand better who they are, and makes you care about them because they're likable and act like real human beings. The other one show these dude bros jumping on the bed and laughing for no reason like a bunch of idiots. And that's the scene.
I remember being such a big fan of the first film and being so disappointed by the sequel because the sequel didn't really feel like it understood what the charm of the first film was.
In the end, I don't think I changed anyone's mind with this video. Odds are, if you hated the Blair Witch Project, you still probably hate it. And if you loved it, well, I'm guessing you still love it. I think this was more or less a therapeutic way for me to just let out my frustration regarding the sequel and how it was so close to being decent but ended up doing everything wrong. I do want to mention some of the positives real quick though. I do like the addition of a possible time loop.
It's been 5 days since we saw you. Maybe 6. I don't even fucking know the sun. The sun is not coming up.
That's an interesting idea, and a decent reason as to why our characters can't get out of the woods. I also like the weird bright light at the end. They don't explain anything, it just happens and it's very mysterious. Maybe it's tied into the alien monster, maybe it's a ship, maybe it's the time loop starting over. It was pretty nice. And there's one very effective sequence where Lisa is trapped in a very narrow tunnel. I'm claustrophobic myself, and this scene really got to me. I fucking hate small spaces. I hate it. Of course, the simple answer that's applicable to most sequels and remakes is that this new Blair Witch movie, it wasn't very necessary, and especially if they attempt to connect it to the original by having the brother trying to find Heather. Can the Blair Witch lore be explored some more? That rhymed, but yeah, sure. The latest video game did an okay job, I guess. But besides that, the first film is its own small, contained little story that needs no expansion. Similar to Alien, the more you make shit up as you go along, the less interesting everything becomes. The first Blair Witch movie remains one of my personal favorite horror films, and I think it's a shame to see how it's been getting shit on through the years. Its impact on the horror genre is undeniable, and regardless of what you think, I think it's a pretty damn big achievement. As for the sequel, obviously I didn't really like it, but if anyone is a fan, I'd be curious to know why. Let me know why you love this film, and who knows, maybe it's gonna make me change my mind. We'll see. I want to thank each and every one of you for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, keep watching horror movies. It's good for your health. Bye bye.